And I want to welcome you to our expert breakout sessions for the Enterprise Integration Summit. This is a session for Progress Convey, and rejoining us is Kurt Monnier, Director of Customer Solutions and Success. Kurt, welcome.
Great to be here, Vance.
You know, we're really glad to have Kurt with us this morning. He drives the Customer Solutions and Success team at Progress Convey. He is both an experienced technologist, as you'll soon see, as well as a passionate customer advocate with expertise across mobile, digital, and cloud platforms, which will also be on display this morning. And in his session, in fact, low-code integrations for enterprise apps, bridging the enterprise digital experience gap, Kurt's going to take a look at something that is really facing a lot of integration and app developers these days in the new year. We all know the demand for delivering faster digital experiences is putting tremendous pressure on IT across the pipeline. And one key to delivering apps faster is a low-code data integration approach that is something easy for developers and still delivers great and reliable runtime when the application is launched. So we're going to have Kurt give us a preview of that technology. He's going to give us a terrific demo, and we're also going to get some great customer experience insights on how the technology really does speed delivery of all sorts of modern apps, not just omni-channel, but even folks that are looking at cloud and serverless technologies. And just a quick reminder, you can download Kurt's slides if you haven't already done so. We recommend you do. Just click that big red button under the view screen. You'll also see that Progress Convey has got some great valuable resources available for download and click. Just take a look at those, both white papers as well as links to the site that takes you to some other great resources. And if you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Just type that in the submit a question box. And now, Kurt, let me turn it to you and tell us about low-code integrations for enterprise apps.
Thank you, Vance. We have an exciting session today. We're going to hear about some of the challenges that organizations are facing. We're going to hear about how some companies have solved it. We're going to see a mini demo. But I'd really like to start things off just to set the stage with a little story. So with that, let's meet Michelle. Michelle is a sales rep for a top 10 pharma company. She's based here in the US, and she's always on the go. She needs mobile access to her CRM and ERP data that is stored in Salesforce and SAP. And she wants it wherever she is on the road, when she's meeting with customers, when she's talking to doctors. She needs all this information handy on her mobile device. She has pretty high expectations for application user experiences and performance, right? She uses her phone all the time. She uses consumer apps all the time. And so she expects the same from her business applications. And her IT organization recognized this, and 2 years ago, they issued everyone an iPad, but 2 years later, they still hadn't built any apps to go on the iPad. And that makes Michelle really frustrated. And I know this very well because this is a true story, and Michelle is actually my wife. And when she gets frustrated, I get to hear about it. So this may sound like some of your users and demands from your business. And what is it that makes it so hard to deliver modern, consolidated applications on top of existing enterprise systems? What I see in my role as the Director of Customer Solutions and Success here at Progress Convey is that there's a few challenges that enterprises tend to run into that cause their IT organizations to fall behind the demand. Now, it turns out a lot of teams and systems are not ready for the demands of the business. There are expectations of rapid delivery, which is increasing pressure on IT to build more things more quickly. A lot of these applications, just due to the requirements of the app, require custom development. It's great if you can just provide an off-the-shelf application that maybe comes with your CRM system, but if you really want to differentiate yourselves, you have to build custom apps that are different than what your competitors are using and that are maybe tying multiple systems together into a single application. Horizontal scaling can be a big problem here. A lot of these legacy systems, when you try to integrate with them, they're just not used to supporting the scale of these multiple applications and interfaces and digital experiences that now need to interact with them. And all of this requires changes to your DevOps process, your change management process, your infrastructure team, and so on. So there's a lot of things that are just new to organizations, and they're being held back by some of the systems and teams that they have in place today. When you talk to IT leaders, such as MuleSoft did with this connectivity benchmark report that they put together last year, one of the most important things that companies know they need to do is modernize these legacy systems. They know that these systems are hard to integrate with and are keeping them from building the digital experiences that they want, but they know they need to do it, but it's easier said than done. I like to refer to the gap between what people have and what they need as the enterprise digital experience gap. Right, on the left side of this chart, you have the various experiences that your users and your business are demanding of you, whether it's mobile applications, web applications, chatbots, wearables, whatever the case may be, depending on your industry and the use cases that you want to deliver. And then on the right, you have enterprise systems. This is just a sampling of some of the systems that you and other organizations have. Some of them are newer systems. Some of them may be systems that you've had for 15 years and have been running successfully, but really aren't ready for the needs of these digital experiences that the business is demanding. Today, we're going to focus on how can you bridge that gap? How can you integrate with these enterprise systems in a way that's going to support the digital experiences that you need? So what can you do to bridge this gap? Well, you should consider a four-tiered architecture. This is a phrase that was defined by Forrester, and what they laid out is that to build these modern experiences, you need to think of things in four different tiers. You have your client tier, which you can think of as the front end that the user is interacting with, the mobile app, the wearable, the web app, whatever it may be, and that's the interface that the user is actually working with. And then you have the delivery tier, right? Where does all that data come from and get into the format that it needs to be in for that client tier? How is it cached if it needs to be performant for some of these legacy systems that have been around for 15 years within your IT organization? They may have an API or maybe not, but even if they do, it might not be delivering sub-second response time that today's users expect. So you need a tier here that's going to allow you to accelerate the data delivery when integrating with some of these legacy systems. The aggregation tier is important as well, right? How are you going to take data from multiple systems, maybe combine it together, maybe translate it from a legacy SOAP web service into a JSON over REST response that your digital experiences require? And then, of course, you have the services tier. This is the existing systems that you need to integrate with, whether they're on-premise or third-party systems in the cloud or in your own cloud, right? So that's obviously an important layer as well. So you need to basically get from the services tier to the client tier, and having these other two tiers in the middle can really help you do that. So a lot of people that we talk to say, well, I have API management. Isn't that enough? Doesn't that expose everything that I need to build these digital experiences on top of my enterprise systems? And API management does play a really important role in this picture. So if you think about where does API management fit in to this integration story, it's really on that services tier and the aggregation tier right above it. API management is an abstraction layer for your data. So if you think about what a good API management implementation looks like, let's say you have a type of record within your system called accounts, right? You have a concept of accounts. Maybe they're your customers, and maybe there's some account data in your CRM system and in your ERP system and so on. With a good API management implementation, you're going to have an accounts API that's going to be used by all the different systems that need to integrate with each other, whether it's a new mobile app that needs to get account data or it's a system-to-system integration. They should all be able to go through this single account API. So you're taking data that's in different formats on the back end, you're creating a REST API on top of it, and you're sharing it across all these services, and it's abstracted. Regardless of what the back end system is, it looks the same to the other systems. So that covers the bottom tier, the aggregation tier here to some extent. But what about the rest? How do you complete this picture? Well, that's where a high productivity platform can come into play. So whereas an API management solution is an abstraction layer for your data, you can think of a high productivity platform as an abstraction layer for your apps. So for the client tier, the high productivity platform is going to have a low code or no code app builder and SDKs to help you build the client applications that you want. It's going to have cloud services in that delivery tier that allow you to define app-specific functions and operations on your data, where you can manipulate the data in the way you need it for each application without having to touch your underlying unified API management layer. It has integration capabilities built in. It's going to help you tie those apps into your API management layer or directly into backend systems where applicable. And it's going to give you some of those cloud caching capabilities that you might need to accelerate the data for systems that might not be as performant as you need them to be. And as I mentioned, can be used either with API management or without, depending on the needs of your business. So to look at all these things together, you have your high productivity platform here at the top, which is giving you abstracted applications. And if you have an API management layer as well, you have abstracted data. And together, you have a great decoupled environment for developing applications where you can meet the needs of your apps, you can meet the needs of your backend system admins, and when changes are needed on either end, you don't have to break everything for every other application. A great example to illustrate this is one of our customers, Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson has been a customer of mine for a long time, and they've built several apps on our high productivity Convey platform. One of those apps that they built is for their sales reps. So they have doctors going out in the field, much like Michelle from our example at the beginning of the presentation. And they have an app that is giving their reps access to their CRM data, as well as some content from their CMS system. And it's all available offline and so on. And so it's a mission critical app. The reps are using it every day. And a few months ago, a change was made by the CRM admin, and to support a new project that was being worked on elsewhere in the organization, they had to change the name of a field or two within their CRM environment. And what that did, unfortunately, is they didn't realize that this change was going to affect all of their applications. So the field name changed, and one day they said, oh no, our app is broken. We're no longer getting the data back for this field. It's saying field not found. Our users are getting errors. This is critical support issue. And typically, if this happened, one of two things would need to be done to solve it. Either they would have needed to roll back that change on their CRM, thus impacting the other project that was necessitating the change, or they would have had to redevelop the client-side application that was installed on users' phones. And even though it's a fairly simple change, they would have had to make that change in code, recompile it, redeploy it. If they were going through the app stores, go through a 2-week review process with Apple. And so they really wouldn't have been able to solve this problem very quickly. But because they're using a high productivity platform in the middle here and adding that second layer of abstraction at the app level, they were able to simply make a change within 5 minutes within our Convey platform, do that translation of the field names that needed to be done, and boom, the app started working again right away. So they were able to be very agile and minimize the downtime for their app when their integration broke because of a change that was made to their backend. It wouldn't have been possible without this level of abstraction that we provided. So I mentioned the Convey platform that they're using. Let's talk about that a little bit more. The Progress Convey is a new approach to high productivity applications for developers, right? You might have heard the term high productivity platform before. We're specifically focused on making developers more productive. How do we do this? Well, with our serverless cloud platform, we aim to turn the development of apps from a monolithic process to a cloud native process. We decouple the architecture of your applications by adding that layer of abstraction, and we enable you to scale horizontally across all the applications that you need to build. We're an end-to-end JavaScript platform, so we actually enable IT teams to work with a more lean model where traditionally, if you were going to build a digital experience that had a web and a mobile component, you would need web developers, you would need iOS developers, you would need Android developers, you would need back-end developers, and you would need a DevOps team associated with this whole project. With the Convey high productivity platform, you can do the whole end-to-end development with JavaScript. So easy to find web developers can actually build cross-platform, truly native mobile and web applications. They can use that same JavaScript developer skill set to build all the cloud services that they need. And we take care of a lot of the DevOps for you. So you can deliver your projects with a much smaller project team and with much easier to find developers. Let's take a look at the architecture that enables this. So you can see here all the components of the Convey high productivity platform. I'm not going to go through them all on today's presentation, but we are going to focus on a few important ones to this enterprise integration story that we're going over today. So to start, just to give you the context for the front end of the applications, we have what we call Convey Studio and client-side SDKs that help you build these front-end digital experiences. As I mentioned, these are all JavaScript end-to-end. We have a cross-platform framework as part of the platform called NativeScript that allows you to build iOS and Android applications and a shared code base with web apps. And you'll see a little bit of this in our demo. So we have low-code tools and SDKs that give you all the functions that you need to build your apps, as well as let you create this cross-platform UI for your applications. We have Identity Connect. This is where we get into the integration. So when you're talking to a web developer, right, JavaScript developer, they may not know the first thing about how to integrate with your enterprise authentication system, especially if it's not using an OAuth protocol. Right? Let's say it's ADFS and it's SAML based. Developer might not even know what that means, but with the tools that we provide and the no-code connectors we provide, we're able to enable these JavaScript developers to integrate in a no-code way with enterprise authentication systems. We have a business logic layer that's going to allow them to write all the microservices that are needed in support of their applications on an application by application basis, whether it's triggering user engagement or manipulating data or creating custom endpoints. We have a serverless platform built in here for all of that. The next component here is our data and file store. Our applications that we're building as IT organizations may be getting some data from our backend systems, but also may need a new place to store data that we're capturing or files that we're capturing from the user. We may need a place in the cloud to, as I mentioned earlier, cache data to accelerate and deliver sub-second response times to our applications. And all of that is built in as part of our serverless framework as well. And then finally, we have our no-code connectors into enterprise data systems, right? Whether they're on-premise systems or in the cloud, we have no-code connectors for about 70 to 80 different backend systems. And we also have low-code integration capabilities as well, right? We have an SDK, so you can write your own integrations as you need to, so that you're not boxed in any way by our no-code connectors that you can use for the majority of your use cases. We also have capability of securely connecting into your on-premise systems from the cloud, either via VPN tunnel or via what we call a secure agent that can be installed within your corporate network. So that's just some of the architecture components of the platform here that are important to the integration use case. And one of our customers that has seen a lot of success using this platform to build their applications is Bell & Howell. Anu is another customer of mine that we've had for quite some time. And Anu knows exactly the power of the platform because he actually tried to build an application first without using a high productivity platform like Convey. And what he found is that when he was building this app for his field service team that needed to integrate with SAP, the response times were really, really slow. Users were waiting over 10 seconds, sometimes more, to get responses back from SAP, and that really is an acceptable user experience. So Anu, by using the Convey high productivity platform, was able to accelerate things from a 14-second response time down to a 400 millisecond response time, which obviously dramatically improved the user experience and the adoption of his applications. So don't just take our customer stories for it. We want to show you this in action. So I'm going to show you a little demonstration of how our platform enables no-code integration and how easy it is with some of what we call our rapid no-code connectors. So what I have here on the right is a iOS application that was built with our cross-platform framework called NativeScript. So this application can be compiled for an iOS device, for an Android device. It can also be shared code with a web app, as I'll show you in this demo. And what I need to do is take some account data, which you see on the left here in Salesforce, and pull it into this application that I'm building for my sales team. And if I log into this app right now, you can see typical sales application gives the sales rep access to their accounts of the day, some product information, some tasks, and so on. And we're going to focus on today's accounts. And right now I have just some sample data being pulled into this app, which let me get started on my UI without having to worry about any sort of integration into the backend. So if I go to this account screen, you can see I just have a few sample records in there that I've been working with. This is actually data that's being pulled from an endpoint. If I hop over to my browser and I flip to the Convey dashboard here, you can see this is what a developer sees when they are working on their backend within Convey. I have a place to configure identity for my users and connect to enterprise auth systems. I have a section for my data, which we'll dive into here. Down here is where I would define my various microservices and business logic for my application, with engagement features as well as some settings that help you through the app development lifecycle. Right now, we're going to focus on the data, though. Right, so you can see if I go to these collections that I have an accounts collection, and that's where this data is pulling from into my application. If I actually explore in here, you can see some sample data. Right, I just put a few sample records into this collection here. This is just dummy data, right? To make this app a real live application and a more compelling prototype, for example, that I might be able to take to my business and show them I'm on the right track, I want to actually pull my data from Salesforce, right? And if I hop into Salesforce, you can see, again, these are the account records that I need to pull into this application. So let's take a look at how we enable no-code integration. If I pop over to the service catalog here, you can see that I have access to, as a developer, all of the different services that have ever been built within my organization, and I could reuse one if I wanted to, or I can create one from scratch. If I click Add a Service, you'll be able to see the different types of services that we have for integration. Rapid, as I mentioned, are our no-code connectors to data and auth. Flex is our custom low-code SDK that you can use to write custom integrations. I'm going to use a rapid data connection, and you can see that I have a bunch of different options here, right? We can connect to REST, to Salesforce, SAP, SharePoint. Hybrid Data Pipeline is actually another product of Progress's that has no-code integration to 70 plus different backend systems. So a lot of options here for no-code. I'm going to select Salesforce. In the interest of time, I've already configured this. But you can see you just put in a few parameters here, and that's really all you need to do to configure a service. So if I go back to my application, let's flip over to using live data here. Go into my environment and go back into that collection. And I'm going to go to the collection settings, and I'm going to tell it that instead of pulling from that Kinvey data store where my sample data is, I'm going to use a real data service. So let me go and select the Salesforce service that I want to use that I already have configured. And I can see the different objects that I have available from Salesforce. In this case, I want accounts. I can activate that service. And if I go back to my application, let's reload that account screen. You can see because of the abstraction we're providing, without even changing any code on my application, it is now showing the data from my Salesforce instance. And because we are using Kinvey's cross-platform frameworks, native script and Angular and shared web code, I actually have a web app running that does the same thing, right? So if I go to the account screen on my simple web app here, I can see that same data now pulling into my cross-platform application, which can also be deployed to Android as well. What this cross-platform development and ease of integration really enables is for you to build your apps more quickly and for you to deliver what your users are expecting. To that end, another example that I'd like to introduce to you guys is Canopy Health. Canopy Health is another customer of ours that is an accountable care organization that is in the San Francisco Bay Area. They are a spinoff of UCSF and John Muir Health, and they had to deliver an application very, very quickly. They had a few months, 2 months to be exact, to deliver a MVP web application that pulled data on patients from Salesforce, from an EHR system, from a third-party provider called PocketDoc, which has some insurance data. They had to build this initial version of a web application in just 3 months, followed shortly thereafter by a mobile application. And they chose to do this on our Kinvey high productivity platform, and the results they had were pretty amazing. So they were able to get that MVP released in 3 months. They went to production with V1 of their mobile app in less than 9 months. They were able to have a very agile 2-week sprint cycle with releases every 4 weeks, which is just something that wouldn't have been possible without the abstraction that Kinvey provided between their brand new digital experience and some of the legacy backend systems that they had to connect to. They were able to integrate with Salesforce, as I mentioned, with EHR and so on. And they were able to, because of this 2-week sprint cycle and 4-week release cycle, they were able to respond to user feedback very quickly and continuously improve their application for their users. This results in high user satisfaction, right? Their users love their application. They've been very successful in a short period of time as an accountable care organization, and they're continuing to onboard more and more customers. Because they've been using a high productivity platform, they were able to reuse their skills and to build cross-platform experiences across web and mobile. They were able to easily integrate with their backend systems using our serverless cloud-native high productivity platform. And because of all these complexities that we took care of for them, they were able to focus on what really mattered, which was their user experience and their proprietary business logic that's going to differentiate them and their applications from their competitors. And you can do the same thing. With a high productivity platform, you can have a faster time to market. You can shorten your app backlog, reduce your costs, make your apps more secure, give your users a better user experience. And in the end, what that's going to mean is that you are going to have happy users and executives, just like my wife, Michelle here. Her company, I'm happy to announce, finally released some apps recently. So she has what she needs, and your users can too with a high productivity platform. So if you want to hear more and have someone from my solution team consult with you and talk about your specific initiatives and challenges. Let's connect. My information's up here, and with that, I'll turn it over to Vance.
Wow, Kurt, great session, and we love demos, and we especially love to see them in action with real results and use cases. A really fantastic session. Thanks very much.
Sure thing. Thank you, Vance.
You know, Kurt, so many different dimensions to probe into here. Let's step back and kind of take a big picture, if you wouldn't mind, just for a minute or two. So many different ways that Progress Convey works with all these sort of components that really need to be in an app: UI, authentication, business logic, data, of course. Can you give us a sense of how important integration is to really rapid app development these days?
Yeah, well, the integration is really one of the most critical components, right? Because an application is only as good as the data within the application, and integration can tend to be one of those things that holds people back. I mean, you have the obvious challenges around the varying formats of the data. Your mobile developer, your JavaScript developer, or iOS or Android native developer, if you're going with traditional app development, they don't know the ins and outs of all these backend systems that they're integrating with. So just worrying about how you need to format request and get the data in the format you need for your mobile app can be a big challenge. I think most people understand that. But the other challenge that you might run into that maybe people don't think of up front is the performance issue. You have these legacy systems that just aren't built to handle hundreds of thousands or millions of API requests. And so you could build your app and release it and think everything's great, but then as soon as your usage ramps up, you start running into issues and you get unhappy users. So how do you solve that problem of data acceleration and whatnot? And that's not an easy problem to solve, but it's fortunately something that with our high productivity platform, we've been able to build in some capabilities that help you do that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You know, speaking of developers and low code, here's a question here. We get this a lot here at the show, and even some ones we did last year. My developers tend to dislike no code platforms. How is the Progress Convey approach different?
That's a great question. And I agree with your developers, actually. You know, a lot of the high productivity platforms out there claim to be enabling business users or making it so that, say, democratizing development, right? You don't need development skill sets to build applications anymore. But the truth is you do still need developers to build good and complex differentiated applications. And developers want to use tools that give them the flexibility that they're used to. So what we focused on when we built our platform, it wasn't so much on let's take development away from developers and try to have someone else do the developer's job. No, what we wanted to do is say, how can we make a developer more productive and do what they want to do and utilize the skill sets that they have, right? So we're focused on allowing the developer to focus on the interesting parts of development and what matters, and taking some of the challenging but more complex kind of behind the scenes plumbing type tasks off of their plate through our no-code integrations, through our cloud caching and data acceleration capabilities. Even our front-end tooling is developer-focused, right? We're not saying, hey, you can build your entire application with drag-and-drop app development. We provide tooling that lets you do some low-code development, but then really still have well-formatted actual code that you can go into and customize your app to your heart's content. So we give developers the high productivity that they would have with a no-code platform, but with the control that they would have developing from scratch on their own. Let's take SAP, for example, right? You might want to integrate with SAP through NetWeaver Gateway, through RFCs, through an API management tool. And so we really focus on flexibility, right? Being able to integrate with however you want or write your own integration. Our Flex SDK that we have lets you utilize any NPM module that you want that's out there. If you're a Node developer, you're very familiar with the whole network of capabilities that are out there in the community for connecting into different systems. We don't want to take any of that away, right? We want to give the developers all the flexibility that they need, the ability to use what's out there in the community, in addition to utilizing the no-code tools wherever they can.
Fantastic, Kurt. You know, another theme that comes out a lot, and you brought it out too in your session, is the cloud. And a question on that: how does the Convey platform differ from using platforms such as AWS or Azure?
AWS and Azure are both great platforms for infrastructure as a service type platforms with some serverless capabilities. For example, like AWS Lambda will let you write functions and whatnot. But what we're looking to provide is kind of one step above that, right? We want to really enable developers with a consistent end-to-end environment that's going to enable them to build those front-end experiences as well, have everything that they need on the server side in a compliant way that's already set up for you, that doesn't require any DevOps. So instead of having individual serverless components, we've made the whole thing serverless, essentially, in conjunction with giving developers some front-end tooling that you wouldn't have available if you were just using AWS or Azure on their own. And I should mention that our platform actually runs on top of those providers, right? So we're actually utilizing those providers as well. But instead of having to build your own backend on those providers, you're getting that plus the front-end components as part of our platform.
Excellent. Excellent, Kurt. Another question here. You talked about that example with SAP that while the APIs were all lined up, the performance wasn't that good. And the question here says, does the Progress Convey platform offer some sort of a test environment or sandbox where we can actually gauge the user experience?
Yeah, we're very transparent with our platform. Anyone can actually go to our website, console.convey.com, and you can sign up for a free developer account that, it's not going to let you build your production apps. There's some limits on there in terms of users and app environments and whatnot, but it gives you access to all of the development capabilities of the platform. So your developers can go and try things out right now. Whether it's a front-end or back-end developer, if you have a JavaScript skill set, then you're going to be able to hit the ground running with our platform. So I would encourage any front-end web developer or mobile developer, they can use SDKs with native iOS and Android if they want to try out the platform. And it really makes it easy for some of these front-end developers to do some of these back-end activities, but then back-end developers as well, building some of the back-end services that your applications may need.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Kurt Monnier, Director of Customer Solutions and Success at Progress Software. Thanks very much for a great overview, a terrific hands-on demo of some real world use cases, and especially for taking so many questions. A really great session.
Yeah, happy to do it, and thanks everyone for attending. Thank you, Vance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we love to do here, let me just remind you of all the great assets that Kurt and his team have put together here. Right under the video screen, you'll see some great links and assets that you'll be able to get to right now. You've already registered with us, so they're available for you without registration required. And just in case we overlooked anything, here is a slide to take you some other terrific assets that will walk you through some other real architectural and drill down features of the Progress Convey platform. Thanks very much.